Can you still see the UI right now?
Yeah, I can see the overview dashboard.
Okay. All right. So do you want me to start now, or what we do? Do you want me
Yeah,
to give you an overview?
I don't know what's happened to the other attendees. We had, I think, 7 registrations, but no one seems to have turned up. So I'll talk to the guys afterwards to see what happened.
Okay. All right. Let's then start. So, Mike, do you know anything at all with NAKIVO? Have you tried the product before?
No. So I've done a little bit of looking on the website, so I have a vague idea of what industry you're in. I've downloaded the free version and tried to use that.
Okay.
Interestingly, I had some trouble trying to map it to a UNC path on a share, but obviously the free version's nothing near what you're going to show me today. So I'm interested to see all of the features and capabilities of the paid offering.
Right. So you tried the downloads. There is a, just to show you where you can download the trial, where you can redirect your potential partners and customers for the trial. So we provide free version, which is 10 VMs, no limits in time.
Yeah.
We provide trials, of course, for 15 days, and we provide NFRs for our partners, existing partners. NFR is, I believe, 2 sockets license, if it's not changed. So I will start with the available installers with NAKIVO, so you have an idea what to use.
Yeah, so I downloaded the free version, and I was having a little play with it the other day.
All right, so from the first, what you need to understand that there are 3 components with NAKIVO. First one we call director. Director, that's the UI of the product. That's the manager. It just...
Just 1 second, sir. I need to get a pen quickly. There we go. Right. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, the director, that's the main component. That's the UI of the product in short, and this is where customers create backup and replication jobs. The second component would be transporter. Transporter, it's like an engine of the product. And once you have always one director managing everything, you can have multiple transporters which are doing the job transfer. The transporters, they do they read the data, they transfer the data, they compress it, dedupe, encrypt. So it's the engine of the product. And if we talk about huge customers, usually those huge customers keep one director and multiple transporters. So they kind of redirect the jobs to the different transporters, and those transporters can take all the heavy load and perform the data transfer. This is how NAKIVO scales. NAKIVO can scale to thousands of VMs, and we don't license transporters, so you can install as many as you wish from the licensing point of view. Once you, let's say, if you have a Windows installer, this already has both director and transporter on board. If you would like to install just the transporter, you have a selection: install only NAKIVO transporter, and you do the installation. The same way with Linux installer. With the virtual appliance, it says full solution. So yeah, by the way, third component, that's the backup repository, but that's obviously where you store your backups.
Yep.
Full solution includes everything: director, transporter, and the repository. Then there is a full solution without backup repository. So director and transporter, once you install it, then you can point to different location where you store your backups. Then transporter only. So I would say virtual appliance, that's the most used tool to install NAKIVO. So you install, let's say, on-prem, you can install full solution, but if you have off-site location, you can install a transporter only on off-site location and keep this transporter to do the data transfer to off-site. Then transporter with the repository. That's a different story, and that's multi-tenant director, which can be used for cloud providers. Right. The same things relates to.
Just a quick question on the multi-tenant director. Do you have granularity in terms of different tenancies, or is it the same rule for all?
Exactly. You have different tenants, and on different tenant, you can have a customer.
Okay. But you don't apply the same rule to every tenant. Each tenant can have a separate set of rules, yeah?
Exactly. Yeah. You mean jobs, backup jobs under rules?
Fantastic. Okay, just checking. I have another vendor we're talking to who has a single rule for all tenants, and it's not a good idea.
Yeah. And each tenant can have multiple users, and you can provide role-based access. So let's say tenant number 1 can have local admin, and this local admin can do everything within its own tenant. But maybe you have another customer, they don't want to care about the backup jobs, but they would like to verify on how things are in terms of backups of their VMs. So they can just have view-only access, and
Okay,
they
so
cannot do anything.
This is the MSP tool, yeah?
Yes, this is an MSP tool, exactly. This can be branded, you can change the logos, the backgrounds. So yeah, this is an MSP tool. Then, well, I'll skip the appliance. This works the same way. Installer for NAS, another very popular option. So you have a full package with NAKIVO director and transporter, and you have more granular in terms of QNAP transporter only package. So if you have 2 QNAPs, on the main one you can keep director and transporter, but on the second one you can keep only transporter. Or you can keep director as a virtual appliance on your VMware environment, but on a QNAP you can keep only transporter, so this will speed up the data transfer. All right. Then you get the Synology, ASUS Store, generic ARM-based NASes, Western Digital installations, Netgear, free NAS packages. And Raspberry Pi, not that popular, but we have it. And Amazon Image, that's not that popular as those previous two as well. So you can keep NAKIVO in Amazon, let's say, and back up your on-prem environment. And if something happens with your on-prem, you always have NAKIVO running on Amazon. So that's also the case. All right, in my case over here, I have a virtual appliance. I can even just show you my vCenter server. This is my virtual appliance. This is beta version of the latest 10.1. And this deploys, you need less than 10 minutes to get it deployed. And this is everything in one, right? So you don't need to install any third-party components at all. Exactly, NAKIVO does not come with any components at all. So this is complete package, and if you need some extra functionalities, the license is limiting you from doing some things. So in fact, customers install everything, all package, they get everything in trial version, but once they get pro version of NAKIVO, which is limited in some functionalities, then this license is limiting them to do some things.
So the trial version is effectively Enterprise Plus, is it? Is that what we're saying?
Right. Yes, correct.
Okay.
The hypervisor, is VMware the only vSphere the only one supported?
It's multiple. Let me show you. So once you install the product, you will have clean interface, and the first thing that director will ask you is to discover your environment. And these are the options. You go to inventory, and once I add new, that would be vCenter OS6i host. That would be Hyper-V host or cluster. Physical machines, Microsoft 365 account, Nutanix cluster, AWS or Wasabi account. So NAKIVO can back up AWS instances either on-prem or to AWS cloud. For Wasabi, it's just used to back up to Wasabi. We cannot back up Wasabi because there was no VMs in Wasabi. And then Oracle database, NAKIVO can back up Oracles.
Okay, but with regards to hosting the actual director and the transporters, can it be hosted on anything other than vSphere? Like the appliance
Anywhere, right? I mean, well, that's the option. You can keep it anywhere. If you would like
you got VMware virtual appliance. Do you have like a Hyper-V virtual appliance, for example?
There is no, if you need, there is no Hyper-V virtual appliances at all. So I mean, you can use Windows installer. Well,
Sure.
you need to use Windows installer because Hyper-V is on Windows, right? So in this case, you just install on the Hyper-V Windows installer of NAKIVO, and you run it.
No problem. Got you.
Right. So this are what is supported in terms of backing up and replication. The most valuable knowledge base article or help center article would be the system requirements. Over here you have the help, and you just click on online help center, and you search for system. Oh, this migration. System requirements. That's those pages show you what we support, like supported platforms. You just refer to this one, and it gives you idea what kind of versions of VMware, Microsoft, Hyper-V we support, Nutanix, and so on. Then in terms of storage integration requirements, so that gives you an idea in terms of what types of integration we provide with the third-party vendors. Then deployment requirements. This gives you an idea what resources do you need to allocate for VMs in order to back up the data. What kind of network requirements you have. This gives you the list of models of Synology we support natively, so you can install NAKIVO directly on those models. And the last one, feature requirements. This is related to specific features we have in our portfolio. So if you need anything specific, so you can refer to this one. You see, it shows you the, let's say, for file recovery, we support those file systems. Then permissions, all types of permissions, and so on. So that's, well, I would say from my point of view, I'm using this page like every day just to point customers to the specific requirements we have. So that will be valuable for you as well.
Quick question, Nick. I saw on the system requirements you had Windows Server 2008. How long are you planning to continue that support for?
I'm not sure until they, is it out of service already? Or?
I think it should already, I mean, isn't it already end of support?
End of support? I'm not sure. So if it's end of support, we might already took it out, but it's still there. Can't say.
No, we have I suppose we have two conflicts. We have Microsoft taking product out of end of support, which means no more updates, no more patches, and so on.
Yeah.
But we have, obviously, there's still a lot of customers out there in the market who still want to run these older operating systems.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I suppose from my side, it's interesting to see that you have that support going back to 2008. For some customers, that will actually be actually put a selling point. That's what I'm saying. So they would look at that as something, because obviously Microsoft don't support it, and we're seeing less and less software vendors offering 2008 support.
Yeah, but we have also existing customers, and they are running in 2008. And if we take out 2008 from the support, and if something happens with their backups, we cannot say that, oh, we just removed 2008 and we don't care. We just need to
I think
support
Microsoft
it
would
as
like
well.
it to run on 2008, but this is where
Yeah.
we see the, I suppose, the conflict. What Microsoft want is everyone 2019. Obviously, they're trying to force users to upgrade to later versions.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So I think we need to wait for, I don't know, at least half a year so everyone upgrades, and then we can remove it. All right, I'm back to this one. So let's assume you've added your vCentral server to backup. You can see what's inside, and NAKIVO director knows who to refer to for taking the VMs and back it up. Then the second step would be the transporters. As I said, transporters, these are those engines, and there are two types of transporters. First one for virtual environments, the second one for physical. And once you discover physical server over here, once you add new physical machine, it says a transporter will be installed on each machine. So this is an agent, because we can back up physical only with agent. So transporters can be agent transporter and a standard one for virtual environment. I believe this one is physical machine agent. But those transporters, they are sitting in Amazon in my case. This one onboard transporter, this is the one which came with the director, was the full solution, and it says installed service. So that's the one designed for virtual environments. You can deploy transporter right from the UI, so you can deploy it as VMware appliance. And let's say if you need to scale, you have only one transporter, but you need to redirect the jobs to different transporter. You can deploy it from the UI, or you can manually deploy it from this page just by downloading this VA. Once you've deployed another transporter, you can add it by typing IP address of the transporter as installed service. Then in terms of transporters, there is a configuration of the transporter which allows transporter to do the maximum load. So this is exactly the number of virtual machine disks which can be transferred at one time by this transporter. And if you provide, well, you can scale vertically also. You can add more resources to the transporter, so it can transfer more data. And if you increase the resources, you can increase the number of transferred disks at a time. So you can put it to 100 even. Disks at a time can be transferred. So these are the specific ports used by that transporter to do the data transfer. And I had
Is
just...
there a recommendation for the maximum number of disks you can have per transporter, or is it just up to the resource?
I think it's 100. So, I mean, you mean the maximum number of this one added?
Yeah, because you mentioned previously there was no limit, but you know, obviously there's a limit. There's I suppose sensible, isn't there?
It's, I think it's even 1,000. Let me see, 1,000 maybe. But I don't think there are so powerful VMs that can manage 1,000. I don't even know the case when you can back up 1,000 disks in a single job. So
yeah.
it just, you know, it's. But we do have customers using 100 for sure, 100 through one transporter. Big cloud providers, they use it.
Mm.
All right, so that's the second step. You have the transporter. I would like to also add that if you would like to use compression and encryption, you need to have two transporters between on each side. Well, compression and encryption used also once you transfer the data offsite, right? Doing this locally doesn't make sense, because why would you need to compress the data if you, I mean, compression during the transfer. So if you do the backups to the local repository, there is no point to compress it during the transfer because it's local, and there is no point to encrypt it because that's local environment. But once you keep offsite backups, so you need to have one transporter on-prem and another one on offsite. So one transporter on-prem will compress the data, the offsite transporter will accept the data and put it to the repository. The same relates to encryption. First one on-prem encrypts and offsite makes the decryption.
So it's one transporter for compression and an additional transporter on that side for encryption, yeah?
One transporter number does the compression. The number two accepts the data and places to the repository. I have just recently the meeting with some drawings, so let's assume we have.
You've got bidirectional communication. It can send and receive at the same time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So those transporters, they communicate between each other, and transporter number A on site number A compresses the data, passes it over to transporter number B, and this transporter number B accepts the compressed data and puts it into the repository. The same way, if you encrypt, this is encryption during the transfer. So transporter number A encrypts the data, passes it over to the transporter number B. Transporter number B accepts that encrypted data and decrypts it and puts it into the repository.
Mm-hmm.
Also, each transporter is not each transporter. If you create a repository, there should be one transporter responsible for that repository. And this transporter will do the dedupe inside. In my case, I have a repository and there is a onboard transporter responsible for that repository. So let me show you repositories. I think this is onboard repository and it shows assigned transporter, onboard transporter. So there should be one transporter responsible for this repository. In my case, this is onboard one, but it can be any. You can deploy multiple. Well, so.
And I'm assuming when you've got that offsite repository and you have two transporters on either side with the compression and the encryption, the reason that you have two transporters on either side is because the compression and encryption takes time. So you're trying to prevent latency. Is that the reason? You're knowing.
That's one of the reasons, and
yeah,
there is also the reason there should be some processing power on a target side to make decryption, to accept the data.
Yeah,
because you might have a repository on offsite location, which is let's say we are doing the data transfer and we are encrypting the data, but maybe on a target site you don't want to keep encrypted data. You want it to be decrypted. So you need encryption during the transfer only. You don't need the encryption at the rest. So this should be someone who will decrypt the data and put it into the repository decrypted. Yeah. Actually, once we talk backing up to clouds, so you can back up to any type of cloud as soon as you can install NAKIVO transporter on that cloud, and as soon as you can provide the connection between NAKIVO director and transporter on the cloud.
Nick, so quick question. So you mentioned compression. You're going off-site. You said that when you were on the same premise, you didn't use a compression. Is that right?
You can use compression on premise. So there are two types of encryption and compression during the transfer and at the rest. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I will show you once I create repository. There are options, and over there you can specify that you would like to encrypt the repository or compress it. But before that, I will give you an idea where you can store your backups. So that would be a local folder. This means local folder on any physical machine or virtual machine where you have transporters sitting. And then once you click on the next step, you need to provide the path to that folder, and you need to provide the name of the transporter, which will be used as a local folder. Then sysshare. So obviously you need to provide the path and credentials. And you see there is also a assigned transporter. So this transporter, you can select which transporter you would like to use to do encryption in that backup repository, compression and dedupe. So there must be some processing power connected to the transporter.
The repository that you're identifying there via the path, let's say that resides on a different physical machine. Does there have to be a transporter installed on the destination, on the target machine?
In this case, no. Once you make it like a CIFS or NFS, we don't require a transporter on that target machine. It can be.
That's just the repository. That's just where it's going to be put in the data. Yeah.
Right.
So you can use you can use the onboard transporter, but point the data at that repository.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The same way we work with backing up to S3, Amazon S3 or Wasabi. So you can use onboard transporter, which is on-prem, and it can be responsible for backing up to cloud. So we don't require something sitting. The only exception is Azure Cloud. At this stage, we require transporter to be deployed as on Azure to back up to Azure. But for S3 and Wasabi, this is not a requirement. NFS works the same way. Local transporter can be responsible for NFS share, and you back up to NFS this way. Amazon EC2, yeah, since we have S3, I would say the EC2 is not that frequently used anymore because it's more expensive in terms of storage, but this would require running a transporter in Amazon as well. Then S3 also, you see, you can use assign transporter and it can be onboard transporter. Then you need to select an account and you need to select a region, and then you need to select a bucket, S3 bucket, which can be used as a target for this backup repository. Then Wasabi, this one is used for Microsoft 365 objects. This is a special type of repository to store 365 backups. At this stage, we support Exchange and OneDrive. Then we will add SharePoint.
Okay.
And the last one, dedupe appliance. So if you have the customers with the
and that would back up the Exchange objects or OneDrive objects to a repository that has a transporter installed, and that repository could be local.
It can be only local at this stage, so you can back up to cloud. For some, well, there are some limitations why you cannot back up to cloud, so it can be only local.
Okay, got you.
This one, the dedupe appliance for big customers using hardware dedupe devices. So in this case, we also create a special backup repository, and we switch off NAKIVO deduplication. In this case, because there is a hardware deduplication, so there is no point to do deduplication twice. And yeah, that's the special one for big customers. And you can use those integrations with third-party vendors.
Okay.
All right.
So that all makes sense. Talk to me about disaster recovery. So your virtual machine goes down, or your virtual host goes down, and you need to get an instance of those services back up as quickly as possible. Is that something you guys can do as well?
That's what we do.
Yeah.
So there are 2 points. There is backup and there is a replication of the VM.
Yeah.
So backups are stored on the backup repository on the storage. The replication is stored on another host. We make a replica of VM on another host.
Right.
Once you have a primary host which is down, you have DR side, and you can bring up the replicas. and you can recover environment. Both cases are used for recoveries, right? But once we recover from the backups, the downtime is longer. You need more time to perform recovery from the backups, rather than if you had a replica, and if the replica is sitting on off-site location, it's a matter of just turning on the replica, and that's it.
So talk to me about how you configure setting up a replica situation.
So come again?
How would you go about configuring NAKIVO for a replica situation?
For replica situation, you don't need to extra configuration. All you need to do is to discover your production environment and DR environment to the inventory, and then you need to create a replication job,
Right.
like
Okay.
here. You say, well, in my case, I have only one vCenter server, but I can replicate from local host to another local host. Let's say I have two hosts over here. So I would like to protect my host number 22. And I say, let's pick up some critical VMs. Let me take this one as an example. Maybe some DHCP server. Let's take 3 VMs. So I would like those VMs to be replicated to host number 80.
Mm-hmm.
So as a destination, I say, let's store those replicas on host number 80. So if the 22 goes down, I have always replicas sitting in powered off state. It's basically like a copy of VM on another host.
Yep.
But in my case, that's local environment. Usually customers have DR environments where they replicate to.
Nick, could you use the replication tool as a deployment kit as well? So if you want to set up a new environment, for example, could you use that tool to actually then deploy or redeploy VMs, as you put it, to set up a new environment rather than just as a recovery? That makes sense.
I would like you cannot use it for deployment VMs. You can use it for copying VMs. If you need a copy of VM on, we have customers that use NAKIVO to migrate VM from one data center to another one.
Yeah, that's okay. So it's kind of deployment of that side. Yeah, with you.
Right,
Okay.
that's migration more, right?
Yeah.
So yesterday, even I have a case. The customer is migrating from Switzerland to Czech Republic, and they have 200 terabytes. And they have a couple of months to do that, and they use NAKIVO to make a replicas from one side to another. All right, so the main difference between the replication and the backup. With the replication, you are keeping the copy of VM on another host on the DR environment, and once disaster happens, you can quickly fail over it. The backup, well, the downside of it, you are consuming the resources of your environment, of your virtual environment, because you need resources to keep those replicas on, even though they are in powered off state. The benefit of the backups, that's resources. You need just to consume the storage resources, and you can dedupe that storage, you can compress that storage. But the benefit of the downside of the replicas is long time for recovery.
Okay. But it's like a high availability, is it kind of?
Yeah, exactly. So,
but in terms of the replica image, how often is that refreshed versus the live image? So, for example, I've got, I don't know, 10 VMs running a live environment. I've got 10 VMs in a replica environment. Obviously, we want to be able to deploy the replica environment quickly in the case the live environment goes down. How close will they be to the original VMs in terms of frequency of update?
that's over here. You have a scheduler, and that's exactly where you set up the frequency of the replicas.
Okay.
So how frequently you would like to renew the data, right? So it's daily, weekly. You can do it every day. You can do well monthly, yearly. That's you can run periodically. You can run even 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, we will make a copy of the original VM and transfer the data to the replica to update the replica.
Yeah, that's cool. Right, thank you.
Yeah, and moreover, we keep the versions of that replica. So that's the recovery points. You can keep, let's say, for backups, for replicas, it's only 30 because there is a limitation from the VMware side, but for backups, it's thousands of recovery points. Also, the benefit of the backup, that's the possibility to store a huge amount of those versions of backups. So this means, in our case, if we backup every 15 minutes, we will keep 30 recovery points. So you will have 30 versions with 15-minute increments of that backup. And also, NAKIVO can store, let's say, end-of-year replicas, version of the replica which is done by end of year. So in this case, the very last day of the year, the very last replica of the year will be stored for me for 3 years, just to keep the records. This is more applicable for backups, not for replicas, because usually customers store the end of year backups and they keep it for years as archive. But it's still available for replicas. So then options, check it because there is limitation. Then different types of options. Whether you would like to use application-aware backups, so replicas. This means that NAKIVO will make a consistency. So if you have running application inside of the VM, NAKIVO will talk to those applications, will ask them to stop the data correctly. Then once everything is stopped correctly, then only then NAKIVO can make a snapshot of VM and convert it to a replica. So this is called application aware. This way, NAKIVO achieves the consistency of the replicas. Otherwise, you could have the data corrupted. And this one, application aware, relates more for Windows applications. There is a technology, VSS, which enables you to back up consistently apps in the Windows machines. Then change tracking, this is used to detect the change blocks. So initial backup or replica will be full transfer, then NAKIVO will detect the change blocks and will transfer the changes.
And when it replicates, is it going to take with it all the MAC address information, the IP address configuration, or will that stuff be stripped out so that it's...
Yeah, it will take everything inside, but you have an option to reconfigure the network.
Yep.
You have the rules. You can create this mapping rule saying that if my VM was, if my original VM was on this network, please reconfigure it to this one in case you boot it up, in case you make a failover.
Okay.
And the same way relates to IP. So you can enable re-IP rules, and you can create it saying that
Nice.
if my source settings, then change it to different one.
Nice. And in practice, how do you find most people use the replication? Do they literally just have the replications turned off? And then if they need to recover, they boot the replicated servers and reconfigure the network routes, the NATing rules and all that sort of stuff? Or do people tend to pair this with a load balancing solution so they've got a single gateway that people connect to and use it that way and have the VMs on all the time?
They keep mostly powered off replicas, and in case of disaster, they just turn it on.
Right, okay. Do you ever have use cases where people, I mean, can you replicate from, say, a production cluster, can you replicate that to another site, for example, where the VMs are powered on? So your replicated machines are actually in a powered on state. Can you do that?
Let me see. I think
I imagine it would have to suspend it whilst it does the replication, but does it have the ability for those to be on when
I
it's
understand the question.
An active scenario here rather than active passive.
Sorry, what was that, Dom?
So we talk about like an active,
yeah.
Active passive, or am I? Obviously, I'm not very technical, so.
So keeping that on, I don't think that's possible at all in our case, because I don't see like the option to keep the replica on. So that's why. So those replicas will be always off.
I see.
Yeah,
okay.
Having it active is kind of not possible. So maybe because we cannot inject the data into running VM.
Well, I suspected that the VMs would be suspended when the job run, but it's just I was hoping that you'd be able to have an active VM updated, if you will.
Yeah,
but it's fine.
So,
that's fine. That's all right.
So most of the customers
keep the VMs that you're targeting from will always be active. Therefore, they're always processing. Therefore, you can suspend something, because it's not as though you have to suspend the actual, I suppose, the primary active VM to be able to do the second one. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. So the ones that are being replicated, the actual production servers that are being replicated, they're going to be on. So I presume you don't have to suspend or turn off the production servers for the job to run. That would be unfeasible. When you run a replication job, you're running a replication of servers that are running. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
Yes. But you can't have the servers that you are targeting as replication servers to be on and running. They have to be off.
They will be off and they will be waiting for disaster. And in case of disaster, you are launching failover job. This failover job will just boot them up.
Yeah. And there isn't, I suppose it's beyond the scope of you guys to have any automation in that. That
we do have automation.
You do? So it'd automatically turn on the replication?
Oh, you mean automatically in case of disaster happens?
Yeah.
That's not the case for NAKIVO. You can do it with scripting. So in fact, you can create. Let me switch to this orchestration tool we have because on the automation I meant this one, site recovery job. But in fact, with site recovery job, you can create a bunch of actions which can perform certain things step by step or in parallel. Let's say you would like to recover first Active Directory, then you would like to wait for 5 minutes, then you would like to stop some VMs on your test environment, then you would like to perform failover of some other VMs. So these are like rules. But the thing is, this cannot be triggered by some how to say event. If an event,
you have to run the script manually, do you?
Yeah, you have to run manually, but you can make a scripting. Let's say you can check the availability of some host, and if this host is unavailable, you can use NAKIVO APIs to trigger site recovery job automatically.
Okay.
So yeah, because there are many complexities behind running automated recovery of the entire site, because NAKIVO, there could be some little problem and the server could be not available for 5 minutes, and we can migrate everything from production to DR side. But of course, this is up to the customer's risk. But let me give you an idea about site recovery job, how it works.
No worries.
So these are actions which you can use for doing things. Let's say you would like to email to your boss in case of some problems. All right, then you just provide the subject. You say that we are starting the DR process because we have some problems. And over here you can say that run this action in production or in test. So you can test those actions on a recurring basis to make sure that everything will be running correctly. So you can set it up to production only mode, because otherwise you will be sending an email every week for your boss. So this is the first action.
This email would be, sorry, this job would be triggered upon what event? Would you have to manually click a button to make this run, or?
Yes, manually clicking. So as I said, you can make a script which will take the ID of this job, and in event the host is not available for 10 minutes, you can trigger this job action, and the site recovery job will be started.
Okay.
But this, all right. So you do email, then you say, for example, let's free up resources on our DR side, because on DR side, let's assume I'm running some test VMs, so I can stop VMware VMs, and I can create a rule or policy which says VM name location is my DR site. Let's assume this is, no, we had DR over here. I think.
So I've just realized, sorry, I've got another meeting at 11, so we'll have to stop in a couple of minutes for me.
All right, so we can, well...
Can we arrange a second session? It looks like there's quite a lot of information that Mike's picking up. Is it possible to arrange another one, Mike? Is that good for you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So let's...
Nick, I'm actually on holiday this week, so if I can come back to you Tuesday next week and maybe set up another meeting to do some further sort of training for Mike, that would be really useful, I think.
Sure. So just send me an email with the suggested date and copy Evgeny also.
I've got my calendar right here. I don't know if you guys have access to your calendar, but we may as well just.
Also, Nick, what I've got you is I've got a couple of questions around 365. So we had some issues with the customer on shared mailboxes. I don't know if this has been resolved yet or not.
Dom, sorry, before we get into that, gents, I'm going to drop out.
Okay.
But yeah, if we could organise some training for next week, that'd be great.
Okay.
Awesome. All right.
Good, Mike.
Catch you later.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you for that, Nick. That was very useful. So quick question on 365, though. Obviously, we had a customer I thought I was going to join today who's had the 365 product, and he's had some problems backing up shared mailboxes.
Yeah, we don't support it at this stage.
Is there any plans to...
Just a sec. Let me just clarify this. Well, shared ones must be supported, and we have mentioned that if it's not, well, I have my product team saying that shared boxes should be supported. If it's not supported, the customer should refer to support team and clarify these questions.
Okay, I'll ask him again, because I'm sorry, it was something he had to, when he tried to do it originally, it didn't work. And obviously he was told it would work, and I believe there was some work being done to make sure it would work in the future, but I didn't know it had been done yet. So
if you can clarify if they have requested the support assistance, and if there are any ticket number associated with that support, so I can jump to the ticket number and to check this out.
Okay.
So just find out the ticket number.
maybe it's more for Evgeny, is whether from a licensing side we had to charge for shared mailboxes if they're available, or they're included against user.
This is not charged.
So it's not charged. Okay. So it's the same as 365. You license against users, and then shared mailboxes are granted free effectively.
Yeah, it's free.
Fantastic. Okay, no problem. Right, I'll double check that. Right, anyway, obviously I appreciate the time coming to the phone today. I'm sorry there weren't enough people there to really make it worthwhile, but hopefully it was useful with Mike.
Yeah, so
he's
no
going to
worries.
be a really good resource for us. We believe he's learning an awful lot, and obviously the goal from this, in line with previous discussions, is that Mike will then be available to me and to my salespeople to actually host customer calls, give, I suppose, initial demos of the product, so how it works and so on, and actually do the pieces which we really should be doing for you guys anyway, in terms of the pre-sale support and the level 1 support. And I think this would be very useful indeed for us. So I appreciate your time.
Sure.
What I'd do, if I can contact you on Tuesday, we can set up another date, because obviously Mike's got loads more he wants to ask.
Yeah, no worries. Just drop me an email. It's nick@nakivo.com, and we can agree on the
Much
best
appreciated.
time.
All right, Nick. I appreciate your time.
Dominic. Sure.
Right, thanks.
Have a good
Good
one. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.